running, and that expressed one idea about society. But then there was another side and another theme that had to be brought in, which is somehow more related to the central character, which is Elizabeth Bennet. And in her hands, the novel becomes a dialogue between the mind rationally sort of saying, this is what we need, we've got to get married, and it sort of almost doesn't matter to whom, provided they have the necessary qualifications, and her feeling that one should be married for love, and that her heart and the affairs of her heart are what mattered. And so for that, then I had to then find a second theme, which would be this one.
Well, here I am, back in Luckington Church, and it really is extraordinary to think that it was 12 years ago that we filmed this series, and I stood on this very spot and got married to Susanna Harker, who was standing just here. I remember it was a very difficult scene to complete because we all got terrible giggles, as most couples do when they're getting married, and there was quite a lot of friction between myself and Colin Firth because the dressers kept asking to rearrange my trousers. And if you look at the shot, you might see why. And as I recall, they never asked Colin to rearrange his.
The thing about Pride and Prejudice, and this is something Colin said to me actually last week when we had dinner, he said that talking about the length that you need, we had 300 minutes, and I wouldn't have wanted to tackle it in less than that, because the story takes place over a year. You actually have to let the two couples separate and seem not to be able to get back together again. If you don't have that and that anxiety about it, you don't pay off at the end when they finally do get together.
I think the reason that this particular production of Pride and Prejudice has had such lasting success is the time that was spent in telling the story. I think that's very unusual these days, to give a classical novel 6 hours of television.
And people do say to me, well, why was it such a hit? And I think the reason is that it's an incredibly good love story. It's, you know, it's a will they, won't they. You know, and that goes on through 6 episodes, and people don't know. And people who've never read the book, right, just don't know the end.
Although I have to say, my daughter only saw it for the first time 2 years ago. I said, don't you want to watch Dad on Being Mr. Wickham? She said, no, I want to watch the OC. America's Next Top Model. And finally, she did watch. I think she was so bored. She'd seen everything else about 30 times. She went, oh, so watch this then. She shoved it in the DVD player and actually became quite a fan. More of Mr. Darcy, I think, than Mr. Wickham, which is very, very galling.
I think that Mr. Bingley tends to be fancied by very young people and very old people. So for me, I don't think it was quite the... I never had the sort of wet T-shirt moment that Colin had.
To the fans, and there are a lot of them, I mean, I'm still being recognised, not all the time, but quite regularly, often by 17-year-old girls who, of course, I forget, have just been seeing it for their GCSEs and go, my God, it's Mr. Wickham. I think it's Mr. Wickham, because a few years have elapsed. So it does keep coming round, and it is a real sort of staple fare.
I think it's also a fairy tale, and people love fairy tales. They love happy endings, and they love stories about an impossible man who falls in love. So I think there are a lot of elements to it, but I think this particular production brought out every aspect of Jane Austen's writing, and I think that's why it's so successful still.
The book itself is brilliant, watertight, the story is brilliant, the scripts were brilliant, the care that Sue took over seeing it, so it felt very secure very early on, I think.
Can't believe it's 10 years since we did it. Doesn't seem 10 years. But I decided that we should all get together because we haven't all got together before. Some of us are still in touch and some of us are friends, and But it's been a long time since we've all been together. So I decided we should actually have a party. So we had it in London and on a roof terrace in Soho.
We just had a good old drink and in a club, and it was fantastic.
We had a wonderful cake, big white cake. It was a bit like a wedding cake, huge cake. And Sue asked myself and Ben Whitrow, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, to cut the cake. So there we were, cutting this cake, and it was kind of like getting married, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett.
I couldn't go, unfortunately, because I was working, which is always a very nice thing to tell your fellow actors.
Obviously, I'm very jealous of Amelia Fox, who's having a film career, so I completely ignored her, because, for obvious reasons. But that was great.
Just got there in time to see Sue and Michael Waring, the producer, and Adrian and Alison walking down the stairs on their way out, so I sort of halted them.
And we all ended up in the bar afterwards, strangely.
And a little reminisce, and it was really nice just to be there at the end, because it meant a huge amount to me.
Also, I think made us realise that the success of Pride and Prejudice continues. There was such a celebration to be had, and you never know, we might be having another reunion in another 10 years. Who knows?
One of the nice things about looking back on it after 10 years, particularly when it took 9 years to get it onto the screen, is just having something that not only in this country but all over the world people seem to have enjoyed so much. It's just fantastic. When it was first shown, the first few weeks, we had literally hundreds and hundreds of letters. I actually had to take 2 weeks doing nothing else but writing back to people, because I wanted to write back to everybody who wrote. But sackloads came in. I don't mean necessarily just for me, I meant for the whole production and for the cast, and I know that Colin and Jennifer and other people got sackloads too.
It just built and built and built, really. And it's amazing. You know, I get letters from all over the world every week. And it's, you know, it's years ago now. And it's, I mean, we never thought it would be like that. But I think it's such a human story that it seems to touch people everywhere.
I don't think anybody could see that it would have such an enduring life. I think that is one of the remarkable things about it. Not only did it have a successful broadcast, it seems to have gone on, and one meets people who watch it every week on DVD or video. The video sales were sold out in the first 3 months, the first run. It just seemed that was surprising.
We knew it was good, but we didn't know it was going to be quite the success that it was, and continues to be. I mean, 10 years after, people are still coming up to me and saying, "Oh, we watch it once a fortnight." I can hardly believe it.
But it's shown constantly in a lot of countries. It's shown a lot in Australia. It's shown a lot in North America. Japan, it's got its own fan club.
I was never in doubt that it was going to be popular, but the degree of popularity surprised me.
But I think the series will survive because it was made with integrity, and I think it was, particularly in some performances, I mean, just delightfully well acted, brilliantly acted.
I suppose I'm bound to think, however immodest it seems, that this is my favourite version of it. Inevitably, because given the chance to film one's favourite book and have the choice of whomever one wanted to cast, and the perfect writer to adapt it, and the perfect countryside to make it in with the perfect weather, it was quite literally a dream come true.